So that intro today was all photos taken with the 200-600mm. Well, hello, good morning and welcome to Camilla and I from West Hay, Tower Hyde. Absolutely magnificent here this morning. Just a quick video for you today on the 200-600mm, which I brought with me here. I don't use it much these days. It's in the bag, but I did bring it with me just in case I wanted to show you something. But on the 200-600mm today, because the 400-800 is coming out, one of the reasons people will be deciding whether to go for the 200-600 or the 400-800. So hopefully on today's quick episode we'll explain that, and I'll also give you later on what we're doing on Camilla and I with our 200-600mm lens. Anyway, I must put the lens down because I get complaints that I wave it around. I get a bit too excited. Anyway, I've made a few notes, so yeah, forgive me if I consult the notes, because we've already had a beautiful male marsh harrier pose for us here at West Hay in a tree, and superb. Anyway, I'll show you some shots later on. If you're not interested in the 200-600 video, you might be interested in the shots we just got of the male marsh harrier. Very nice. Anyway, we're revisiting the 200-600 and what makes this such a good lens for wildlife photography. And indeed, it's been the mainstay of many a wildlife photographer for the last few years. So we'll look at the cost considerations. The 200-600mm is £1,600 currently in the UK, and the new 400-800 I believe is coming in around £2,600. So there's £1,000 cost differential to start off with. I think it's such a good lens because it fits into most people's wildlife range. Oh, marsh harriers in. Cut. Well, I think we're okay. I think the coast is clear again. So back to the video. Yeah, some more male marsh harrier action. Superb. Anyway, quick check the notes. Yeah, so it fits into most people's wildlife. The 200mm to 600mm. You've got a 4 times magnification to 12 times magnification of the standard 50mm focal length. So yeah, it fits into most people's bracket. And you've got a range of f5.6 to 6.3 in the 200-600. Obviously, most of the time it's used at the long end. 90% of the shots we've taken on Camilla and I are taken at the long end, 600mm at f6.3. So it's a reasonably well balanced lens. It's not bad. It's quite a weighty package, but it is quite well balanced. So with the internal zoom, you just have to give it a quarter turn to get from 200mm to 600mm, which is absolutely superb, and the lens doesn't extend outwards. 2.6 kilograms or 5.12 pounds, so not a lightweight piece of kit. A reasonable weight for such good glass, although it's only a G series Sony lens, it is very good. So you can pick up your copy from Castle Cameras for about, brand new at the moment, for about £1,600. So it's not a bad price for a medium telephoto lens. And indeed, with the introduction of the 400-800mm, that lens could probably now be purchased second hand around the £1,000 mark. So if you were to pair the 200-600mm lens with a cheaper Sony body. For example, you could have the top of the range APS-C model A6700, or you could go for a cheaper A75, something like that. Absolutely marvellous. And for around the £3,000 mark, you would have an excellent beginner wildlife setup. The 200-600 has also been very popular with videographers, people who take videos of wildlife as well as pictures, because it's such a good focal length. You can get more context with your subject. You can go from 200 to 600, so you can get a bit of the environment as well as the actual subject. Yeah, those are the main features of the 200 to 600, and indeed on Camilla and I, we used it extensively as our main lens before we got the 600mm. So what are the limitations of this 200 to 600, and why do Camilla and I not use this lens at all at the moment? The f6.3, which of course most of the time the lens is used at, can be a little bit not usable at certain times of the day. First thing in the morning, last thing, sunrise, sunset. f6.3 is not f2.8, it's not f4, and sometimes just to get the shot you need the autofocus ability to work, and if there's not enough light coming into the sensor, the autofocus won't even pick the subject up. So this can prove tricky if you're not in a sort of static position, and also you don't get the depth of field. Obviously f6.3 again is not f2.8, it's not f4, and that is why I suppose principally I don't use the lens at the moment. So although the software is excellent at reducing the noise these days, and you can get away with an awful lot, it's still critical to get as low an ISO as possible. The 200 to 600 is not the slowest to focus, but also it's not the quickest. My 300 and 2x converter combination, for example, is lightning fast in comparison, and that again is why we don't use the 200 to 600 now. Another consideration you do have to bear in mind with this lens is the quality out of the lens. It is very good, but it is only G glass, and you can get better obviously with the fixed primes in Sony, and now indeed that's why people are considering the 400 to 800, because apparently the 800mm of the new lens is very good at f8. For better quality images you could go for, say, a Nikon PF 600mm f6.3 lens, which would be far superior quality in the Nikon range. And indeed for Sony, Sigma do a 500mm f5.6 lens, which is very light and versatile, and that too could be an option. Check out my video on the 500, and that is around the £3,000 mark. So yeah, not as cheap obviously as the 200-600, but not far off the 400 to 800 price. So you have to bear in mind it's the lens that you have with you, the lens and body that you have with you, that is absolutely crucial in wildlife photography. It's no good if you can't lump round a big heavy weight. And personally, not being Arnold Schwarzenegger, but no slouch, but we do find this and a body quite a weight to carry around. This combination, the 300 and A1 II, is far lighter than the other, and this is why we reach for this, the ability to point skyward and wave this around, no problem at all, and indeed carry it round our neck all day long. This is why we go for the 600mm of the 300mm with the 2x converter over the 200-600. So if you're mostly static in a hide like this one, obviously you can just carry the lens on the stealth gear trolley or on your back and mount it on a tripod, like we've got the 600mm here, 1.4 converter, and the A9 III. And in a static position, obviously you haven't got a problem. So the 200-600mm is a great first time buy. I would absolutely recommend it for anyone. Budget, first off, first lens, well worth buying. And of course getting more affordable with the introduction of the 400-800mm. It's a reasonably robust lens. We've got a moss covering on it. It's not too big a filter size. I mean, it's a 95mm filter size. The new 400-800 is 105mm size. And indeed, if you're moving up from the 200-600 to the 400-800, it is exactly the same controls, except on the side of the barrel you get an extra DMF button, direct manual focus override, which means you can override the focus with a twist of the focus ring on the 400-800. The 200-600 doesn't have this feature, so a consideration. So the 200-600mm gets you to 600mm, which is what we say here in the UK is the very useful focal length, and I think the length you want to go to even to start your wildlife photography. But obviously the 400-800 gets you to 800mm at f8, an amazing feature. So I think it'd be well worthwhile for intermediates who've got the 200-600 to perhaps switch up to the 400-800. Now they've totally got familiar with the 200-600. So finally, what am I going to do on Camilla and I? Well, it's a bit of an interesting scenario really, because the 400-800mm is the first Sony lens that goes to 800mm directly. And currently on the camera, I mentioned earlier, we've got the combination of the 1.4 teleconverter and the 600mm. Well, this takes me to a very good 840mm f5.6 lens, which you'd think would be superior to the 400-800, but apparently the 800mm is actually better, sharper at 800mm than this combination, according to Steve Perry, Backcountry Gallery. I've yet to check this out for myself in the real world scenario, so we'll be getting back to you when we get the 400-800mm from Castle Cameras. And don't forget, usual like, subscribe, and then you see my review coming up on the 400-800, because that should be a very interesting lens. And it's a case whether we're actually buying it or not. It's a tricky situation. The only reason we'd be buying it is for the 800mm of reach, if it's superior optical quality than this combination here. And so we'll be testing the lens out for you, and also for ourselves. Will we replace this combination with the 400-800? And indeed you could probably get better results, not in such low light because you're f8 and this is 5.6, but you could get better potentially optical shots. And with the DxO noise reduction, etc., a £3,000 lens or a £2,600 lens could be better at 800mm than this £12,500 combination is at f5.6. So yeah, a consideration. So that's what we're looking at on Camilla and I, and that is the only real reason the lens is of interest to us. It's no good as a walk around lens for Camilla and I. We can't take the weight, we're not Arnie. This combination now to point skyward, you can do it for limited periods, but it's heavy, it's heavy. And that's the main reason we don't use the 200-600, and that's probably the main reason I wouldn't use the 400-800. But in a static position, if the 800mm is better than that combination, we are interested on Camilla and I. So summing up, there is some logic to go straight for the 400-800mm. And indeed, if you're somebody who's already using the 200-600, that's probably an intermediate move up. But if you're a beginner, I would recommend sticking to the 200-600 because bang for buck, around the £1,000 mark second hand, I think this is a superb starter lens for anybody just getting into wildlife photography. As for myself, will we buy the 400-800? Well, keep watching Camilla and I. And yeah, we've got more gas than ever, but Castle Cameras have assured me that I will get the first lens and I'll be trying it out on your behalf and indeed my behalf, because I'm very interested to see how it performs at 800mm. And indeed, apparently the autofocus on the 400-800 is very good as well. So yes, you know Camilla and I, we buy the lens so you don't have to. Anyway, thanks for watching an update on the 200-600 and the 400-800. Have a good one. Bye from Camilla and I. A brand new nature reserve to Camilla and I. Never been here before, so I don't know what to expect. Already, the only thing I know